developer evangelist with Microsoft, for those who don't know me. And yeah, we were about an hour off here, but that's okay. We'll get this ball rolling. I guess what we'll begin with is I'll just kind of do some screen sharing. Hopefully you guys can see my screen okay. Give me just a second as I pop up the screen sharing, kind of get things organized here a little bit. And we'll be ready to rock and roll. I tend to not flip around a lot. I just do straight screen sharing for the most part. That way it's just a whole lot easier for folks. So I'm just going to kind of share my screen and have my slides at the same time. Here we go. And let's see here. All right. I'm going to share everything. You guys can, hopefully my lovely Outlook requests and stuff will come through. Brian, if you can let me know if that's coming through okay, and hopefully folks aren't having to scroll a whole lot. I kind of reduced some of the stuff there.
It looks fine to me. I just tried on 2 different monitors. Yeah, it looks fine.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Hopefully folks can see it. If not, give me some feedback and in the Q&A pane, folks, and I'll adjust as necessary. But should be a nice size, especially if you go to full screen. Just so you know, I did do some setup last night, or not last night, or earlier today, rather. And if you'll look, before you go to full screen, I know you can find it. There's a little thing way up and to the right called the handouts. And I'm not sure where it's at off if you go full screen. I don't even know if you can get to it from full screen. But there's a thing called the handouts. It looks like 3 little pieces of paper way up and to the right of your screen. I have made this slide deck available to you for download, so you can download it. And so feel free to do that, and if you want. And I guess we'll just get rocking and rolling, folks. We'll jump right into this. So I know we're running a little late there. Okay, so all of this, of course, is to promote my new book coming out. Originally thought it was coming out early June. It appears that there's a whole bunch of formatting. This is a major departure from the original Tips and Tricks book written by Sarah Ford, in that we've done a lot of formatting changes. So apparently all the formatting changes caused a delay. Looks like it will be out in August. So sometime in August we'll get that thing knocked out and out into the shelves. It looks like probably mid-August or late August at the latest, we hope. It's a 2-month deal. Everything's submitted now. They're just formatting it, but there's some special stuff in there we're doing with tables and keyboard shortcuts that's kind of delaying it. All right, so let's just jump right into this. And hopefully, actually, I said I wasn't going to ask a whole lot and I tend to not ask a whole lot of poll questions or jump around, but I am going to ask one real quick. What version of Visual Studio are you using? That's kind of important, so I'm just going to put some choices in here: 2010, 2008, 2005, and that's as far back as my tips go, although technically a lot of the stuff applies to older versions. Just tell me what version of Visual Studio you're primarily using, and we'll share that out. There we go. There it is, and I will say results are shown so you guys can see. I'm pretty open if you've been with me on a webcast before. I share everything. I don't hide anything. All right, so we're going to let everybody answer that. It looks like then it's about what I expected. Most people will tend to come to this session thinking that it's, I am the tips and tricks guy, right? And there's this misconception that all I talk about is Visual Studio 2010, which isn't true. In fact, I cover all the major versions back to 2005. That is, I won't go back any further in 2005, and I'll tell you guys why I did that, because a lot of people have asked me, and the reason is real simple. I did that because you can go in 2010 at least, you can go back in the framework to 2.0. So I said, okay, well, I'll go back to furthest lowest level framework version you could have used. So I decided to go from 05 to 2010. So that was kind of my rationale. For better or worse, that's how I wound up there. Okay, so half of this is pretty much 2010 stuff, because people love the new stuff, and that's good to see that most of you are on 2010, or all of you. The other half is stuff you can use in any version of Visual Studio. And I've started asking what version of Visual Studio you use primarily, because what I found is people use multiple versions depending on the company you work at. So your primary version, you know, it looks like most people's primary version is 2010. So let's jump into this. I'm just going to rev up Visual Studio. And again, let me know if I skip around too fast. Hopefully the bandwidth's pretty okay. Normally, when I do one of these, I'll have a nice little setup going. And what I do, click now. Let's try that again. And normally, what I'll do, oh no, it looks like it's just kind of going in the background there. Normally what I'll do is I'll have a couple of sessions I can look at. I'll have two laptops running so I can see what's going on. Don't have that this time. Got a little off guard. All right, so here we go. First and foremost, you're going to notice that the minute you go to create a new project, you're going to see, you know, some changes. So let's address some of those changes. First of all, you've got your choices of the framework. That's not new. We introduced that in 08. However, as you come over to the right, one of the things that's new is you now have the ability to sort the default templates, or actually sort your templates in various areas. Now that is new. We had a lot of people saying, hey, I don't like the default sort order. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense to people because it wasn't alphabetical. So we've added alphabetical listing. You can do ascending or descending. That's your call. Personally, I don't care. I've been, you know, and most people don't. They've been using it so much that they've kind of gotten used to the order. But if the order drives you crazy, and there were some people who just drove them absolutely nuts, then you can resort that. I think an even better deal is now this ability, hang on a second here, let me hop back in. Now this ability to search the installed templates. Now this is pretty cool. If you haven't seen this yet, way up and to the right here, you can click in there and type what you're looking for and search the templates. Very, very powerful, by the way. So for example, I'm looking for web stuff. So I'll type web, and boom, instantly you can see that it filters by web. Now there's a little bit of a problem here. One of the problems is it's showing me all the languages. If I want to filter by language, a good technique is to lead with your language. So if I'm a VB coder, then I'll lead with VB, right? Or if I'm C#, I lead with C#. And again, of course, C++, I would lead with C++, but there's no C++ web here. So there you have it. You can lead off with your language, which is, you know, typically a 2 or 3 letter abbreviation. And then boom, you go into whatever keywords you want to use. When using the install templates, it's pretty cool, but to be honest, most people are kind of used to the install templates, so it's not really that, you know, you're probably not looking at it going, wow, that's impressive. It's when you're dealing with unknown templates that it becomes very impressive. So for example, if I go to online templates, which actually goes out to the Visual Studio Gallery and populates with a list of templates that have either been put in by Microsoft or by folks in the community who want to donate templates. And by the way, I encourage all of you, if you want to donate some templates, it never hurts to have plenty of templates. You can see there the Mother Effin' HTML5 site. Very interesting. That's new. I've never seen that one before. But anyway, when you're dealing with unknown template lists, like online templates, this is where it becomes very powerful. So if I'm looking, again, for WCF stuff, I might type WCF. And it finds me things related to WCF. Now, interestingly enough, again, I want to filter by language, so I'll do C# space WCF, and then it filters on the language, so I have stuff just appropriate for my language. So that's where the search, in my opinion, really, really shines. I think when you're dealing with search in that area, it becomes extremely powerful. Don't discount the online templates. There's a lot of great templates there. Okay, so that's all great and good, but here's something interesting we found out. And I've traveled a lot. I've talked on this thousands and thousands of times to thousands and thousands of people. And here's what I think I just snorted. I don't know if anybody caught that. But anyway, here's one of the things we found out. Most people do not use, say, more than 1 to 5 templates a week, a month, a year. So we created something special in 2010. It's this thing called recent templates. It's up here to the left, recent templates. Recent templates is real simple to understand. Basically, recent templates is your last 5 most recently used templates. That's it. Last 5 most recently used templates. And essentially, it's very useful. What I'm finding out in the wild is most coders now are actually staying in recent templates. Most people don't use more than a few templates. And it's rare that I see anybody using more than 5, even in like a year. So recent templates was designed specifically so that you don't have to dig through the installed templates all the time, although most of us probably have it down on muscle memory at this point. But recent templates saves you time and energy. All right. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. So there's one of the new features. I'm just going to pop up some code here. Let's move on. Several good stuff, good things happening there. One of the other big things that we have for you is box selection. Now, box selection is pretty powerful. If you haven't seen it yet, I think you'll be impressed. And actually, I'm going to need a new project for that. So I'm going to create a new project here real quick. So box selection basically works something like this. It's been around for a long time if you've never seen it. I'm just going to make my code just a little bit bigger here. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. Now, here's the deal. If I hold down my Alt key and use my left mouse and click and drag, I get a box. This should not be new to you. You've probably seen this in Word or other text editors or other places, maybe even here. This is not a new concept. This concept of the box selection has been around for at least 20 years that I'm aware of. So not a new idea. However, what is new in Visual Studio is the concept of the zero-link box selection. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm just going to do my Alt key and my Shift key, and then use my arrow keys to create a nice little box selection. So I just went right and down a little bit. And I do this because it's just easier for me to show it to you this way. Now, when I do this, I'm just still holding Alt and Shift. I've got this nice wide box selection, but watch me make it skinny. It's going on a diet here. And bam, there it is. Now, hopefully you can see that thin blue line. In fact, I'm just gonna ratchet this up a bit. And give me just a second while I deal with something that just cropped up here. Sorry about that, folks. Hopefully everybody can hear me again. I'm going to crank up the volume a little bit there. Okay. All right, good deal. Let me know if you can't hear me. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. So here we go.
You're fine.
Yep, we good? Okay. So here we go. Zero-link box selection. Here's how it works. Basically, here's what you need to do. You just get your zero-link box selection and you start typing. Check it out. Here we go. Here's what it's used for. Whoops. Let's see, I'll do one of these. There we go. Boom, zero-link box selection. So zero-link box selection is essentially a live cursor. So if I do my Alt and my Shift key and just hit this down arrow straight, you'll notice I get zero-link box selection. I can change these very quickly, multi-line. If I want to, I can even change all of this, and I'll do that in just a moment. Now, of course, I'd have to change the individual items once I created them. That's not a big deal. Right, we're good there. No problem. All right, good stuff. All right, so with that said, that's impressive, and that saved me, by the way, quite a bit of time. But I'll show you something that saved me even way more time. Here, I'll do a private, like, double. And I'll call this blub and set it equal to, something like that. All right, so here's something that saved me just a ton of time. Oftentimes, I'll be looking at something and go, wow, this double is what I really need all these ints to be. So you can do this. You can do a single copy, do a box selection, single copy, multiple paste. And that'll, boom, that saved me just tons and tons and tons of time. So give that a shot. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you got any questions, I tend to be pretty darn interactive, so I'm constantly watching the Q&A piece up here at the top of my screen. If you got any questions, ask them in your Q&A pane, and I'll answer them as we go along. I'm sure stuff will come up that you want to know about, and I dig it. I'll answer your questions. I tend to be very interactive. All right, so here's the deal. But let's say that, you looked at this and you decide, no, you really want all these things to be private ints. So what do? Well, again, this is where box selection is really awesome. If I hold down my Alt key and do a box selection over all this, I can just start typing. Boom. And instantly a box selection it will delete whatever you have and then turn into a zero-link box selection so you can type on multiple lines. So you've got some pretty darn powerful features now in the editor with dealing with multiple contiguous lines. The one thing it doesn't do is deal with spaces between the lines. However, I suspect they're going to probably put something, some ability to deal with that into it as well at some point, although I haven't heard any official word. All right, so moving right along, some of the other goodness that we have, improved Intellisense. Yes, Intellisense is your friend. Now, back in the day, what you had with the old Intellisense was like I've got here, you type console.key and then bam, instantly Intellisense gave you this big old long alphabetical list. Now take a good long look at that list while I talk about this for a second. So you can see it's a huge alphabetical list. Notice there's only one thing that begins with the letters K-E-Y. But there's this huge list. I mean, look at the little scroll bar to the right. It shows you where you're at and how much stuff you got to get through. That's just huge. That's changed radically now in 2010. And I've got a couple questions. I'll get to those in just a second as soon as I address this. So in 2010, here's the way it works. If I do the same thing in 2010 or something similar, let's say I just type DO, for example. Notice if I zoom in on this, that there's a lot of stuff there, but notice not quite as much as there was in old versions of Visual Studio. In fact, even going as far back as when Intellisense was first introduced in VB5, Intellisense pretty much hasn't changed a whole lot. But in 2010, it's radically changed. What you're looking at now is not the classic begins with, although at first glance it appears that way. That's not what this is at all. In fact, what this is doing is this is showing you everything that has the letters DO somewhere in it. Take a look at that list. Everything there has the letters DO somewhere in it. And that's why it's a significantly shorter list, and it's easier to get to. Now, why did we do that? Well, we made an astounding discovery. I know this will shock you. But apparently, when you have longer, more descriptive method names, you tend to forget what something begins with, but you almost always remember something inside the name, right? And we're like, well, wait a minute. We should just make it so if they type anything they remember, they can find what they're looking for. And that's what we did here. So that was the goal behind this. Now, it gets better. Coming back to this, let me show you something real quick. Do you see the thing called app domain unloaded exception? App domain unloaded exception. You'll notice it's using Pascal case, which is the recommended, casing methodology that you should use for in this case, for method names. So, app domain unloaded exception. Now watch this. You're going to love this. App domain unloaded exception. That's right. You no longer even have to type words. You just type the uppercase letters that you know are in the method name, or in whatever the member name. I say method, any member name. Doesn't matter, properties, whatever. Events. And boom, it pops up. It gets better than that even. Check it out. What if you don't remember all the letters? Like, you don't remember what it begins with. You just know it has the letters D and U somewhere in it. Okay, well, it'll filter the list down and show you only those things that have DU somewhere in it. So there you have it. Now you went from, you got to remember what something begins with to, you just got to remember something in it to, you just got to remember a couple of uppercase letters and you're in pretty good shape. That's a pretty radical change in Intellisense. Massive, massive radical change. All right, I got a couple questions. Let me address them. Let's take a peek. What would you say is the most productive enhancement found in Visual Studio 2010 as opposed to 08? I would say this. I would say the Intellisense, and this is from Brian, I just noticed that. This is probably the most productive enhancement I've found, in my opinion. The Intellisense changes is really a big game changer, because since VB5, Intellisense fundamentally hasn't changed until now. Now it's super context sensitive, pays attention to what you're typing, pays attention to uppercase. I'd say your chances of getting carpal tunnel just went down, 600%. So that's kind of cool. Ace is on here. Is there a way to sort Sort find controls in the toolbox. Yes, I'll find. It's interesting you asked that. Although I wasn't really dealing with the toolbox. If you deal with the toolbox, there are ways to do that. Remind me when I get to the when I get to a slightly different set of code here with my control examples, and I'll show you that. I'll show you the toolbox stuff. In fact, I think I even have a slide on it, so I'll get to that, ACID. All right. So, but that notwithstanding, now you see we've got some pretty darn big changes that have come down the pipe. Certainly, the multi-line editing was a great deal, big time saver. Nothing, in my opinion, though, on a par with the improved Intellisense features, the includes now, and the Pascal case sensitivity. All right, so another big deal, big selling point for Visual Studio 2010 has been the multi-monitor support, without a doubt. You know, for eons, we've been able to take, tool windows. And here I'll just kind of minimize everything. You've been able to take tool windows and rip them out of the IDE, no problem. You know, that you've been able to do for quite some time now. What you've never been able to do until recently, until 2010, is be able to take document windows outside of the IDE. But guess what? You can do it now. And the reason we did this is for obvious reasons. You can now put document windows on multiple monitors. So now you can rip a document window off, stick it on another monitor, and you're good to go. It gets better than that. Somebody challenged me not too long ago. Somebody said, well, that's great, Zane, but what if I want to work on the same document on multiple monitors? I was like, okay, well, first of all, your document's probably too long if you're doing that, but fine, I'll answer the question. You can do this. I don't know if you knew you could do this, but you've been able to do this for quite some time. If you go to Window and click on New Window, it will actually make a Xerox copy of your code window for you. Once you've made some copies, you can then rip off the copies and stick the copies wherever you want. The good news is, as you work on these, it's all live. So as you're working on this stuff and playing with it there, and edit it, you can see that it's all live. There we go. Something cool like that. So it's all live, and you can work on multiple areas of the same document simultaneously. So I might work on the top, the middle, and the bottom, all at once. Whatever you're in the mood to do, go for it. The multi-monitor support is fully integrated inside of there. So very cool stuff. Now, I don't know if that's a new question or no. Okay, I'll come back to that. All right, so hopefully you guys are digging on this so far. Am I going too fast? Is everybody cool with this so far? You guys doing okay? Give me some feedback through the Q&A pane if you want. Let me know if you're liking this so far. If you're not liking this, just say I like it, I hate it. I'm going to find you in the parking lot and beat you senseless, something like that. Give me some feedback. Let me know you're out there. It's always good to know there's live people out there. Now, while you're doing that, we'll move on. The call hierarchy. The call hierarchy is your friend. Now, it is currently C++ and C# only. So, but as I understand it, it's definitely coming for VB. But the call hierarchy is a very interesting animal. Let me show it to you real quick. So basically, if I've got, if I've got a bunch of methods I'm dealing with, I want to check out the calls. In the past, whenever you wanted to, I've got a method call another method, and I want to look at a call stack, essentially. In the past, when you wanted to look at a call stack, what you used to have to do was you'd set a breakpoint and then actually look at the call stack window. Well, that's fine, I guess, but what if you're in the middle of developing and you don't want to go to the trouble of building your solution or building your project just so you can get a call stack? Seems kind of painful, doesn't it? So we've gotten rid of that, basically. You still have the call stack and still use it in your debugging sessions, but now we have a design time call stack viewer, if you will, called the call hierarchy. It's very simple. You just right-click on any method. In this case, I'll choose the FOB method in my code. Right-click on any method and go to View Call Hierarchy. View Call Hierarchy. And what that will do is give you a nice design time call stack that you can use. And check it out. It shows you calls to and calls from the method that you chose. And if I expand those, it actually shows me what's calling to it and what's calling from it, right, where I'm calling out and in, basically. And if I click on any item, like here, I'll click on stuff, and I say, well, wait a minute. What in stuff calls the FOB method? Well, I click on stuff, and over at the call sites to the right, it actually shows me the FOB method. It even gives me the location, the file name, the line number, and the column. So it's all there. It's like Prego spaghetti sauce. It's in there. And if that's not good enough, I can just double click on it, and it actually takes me to the line of calling code. So basically, the call hierarchy was created specifically with the intent of making it possible for you to have a call stack viewer without having to build your solution or build your project. Very, very useful, by the way. This has definitely saved my bacon in a lot of situations where I've been, I've gone through the debugging process, and then I found something else, and I go, oh no, I need to follow that. Then you can use the call hierarchy to kind of follow something. All right, so I'll get rid of that. And then now, very quickly, want to address Ace's question. His question was about the toolbox. So is there a way to find things in the toolbox? And actually there is, but before I do that, and I think it's a slide later on, so I'll just throw it out here. But basically, if you're in the toolbox and you got a bunch of stuff in there, I don't know if you know this or not, but you can quickly collapse or expand all in the toolbox. Here's how you do it. To collapse everything in the toolbox, make sure it's highlighted, and then hit your / key just under the question mark. That will collapse everything in the toolbox. To expand the toolbox, you just hit your, type an asterisk, shift, and the number 8 for most folks. So you can quickly expand or collapse the toolbox. Now, that's cool, right? But in addition to that, if you're looking for something specific in the toolbox, as you're digging into something, you can actually start typing what you're looking for. So, for example, if I'm looking for stuff that begins with DA, now, this isn't begins with operation, unfortunately. It's not as advanced as the Intellisense, hasn't caught up to it yet. But if I start typing DA, notice down here at the bottom, let's see if I can zoom in on it there. Notice down at the bottom it says I'm searching in the toolbox. Hit Tab for the next result, hit Escape to cancel. And it even shows the letters I typed, DA, right? So what is that? Well, as soon as I've done that then, and I'll just come back and type DA again, as soon as I do that, I can hit my Tab key, and it will go through everything that begins with a DA. Notice it going through all the stuff that begins with a DA. By the way, I was asked this the other day, does it work if everything's collapsed? And the answer is yes, of course. It works everywhere. So if everything's collapsed, it just expands it. Now, it's actually kind of cool if it's collapsed, if you have everything collapsed before you start, because you notice as I go through, the minute I'm done looking in an area, it's actually collapsing the area. And when I leave, does everybody see that? Do you see it collapsing when I leave? So it's actually, I would recommend that you actually collapse, hit the / key ahead of time, and then begin your search if you're digging through a lot of controls, because it will get the extra stuff out of your way. Okay, cool. Let's try that again. There we go. Tab. There you go. Cool. All right, so hopefully that answered Ace's question. And it looks like we may have one more question on there. Sneaky. Looking at the recent announcements, Scott Guthrie is leading the developer platform team and joining the Azure team. Do you think we'll see a lot more cloud-centric enhancements to Visual Studio than we're currently seeing? Wow, that's a good question, Brian. So more cloud stuff. Yes, but not because Scott Goo's going to the cloud team. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think you've got it turned around. I think because we're doing more with the cloud and we are fully invested in the cloud, because of that, Scott Goo is going to the cloud team, and you're going to see more cloud-based stuff available to you. So I think, chicken and egg, it's very clear which one came first here. We said we are going full-on cloud. Everything will be in the cloud. I think our commitment was 100% of all apps in the cloud. So everything's going to be in the cloud at some point. So yeah, and because of that, we said, well, hey, Scott, you're one of the coolest guys we know. Can you lead this stuff? And of course, Scott, being the guy that he is, said, sure, I'll take it on. And there you go. So yeah, you're absolutely going to see way more cloud capabilities in every product across the Microsoft spectrum, bar none. Which leads me to my next point. If you have not currently started investing a little time and energy into seeing what the cloud is all about, better start. This is kind of like, I liken this to the early days of WPF. When, in the early days, people were like, oh yeah, WPF, whatever. And then it kept going, and finally now it's like, okay, well, if you haven't looked into WPF by now, you're pretty much in trouble, because we have it in Silverlight, we have it on the desktop, we're going to have it like in all kinds of stuff coming up that you can't possibly imagine. So it's kind of like that. these major game changers that are coming along, and the cloud is a big one. All right, there you go. That's as much management speak as I could muster for one session. Game changer. There you go. Soon to be an epic novel. All right, so we looked at call hierarchy. Ah, yes. Speaking of WPF, let's address this real quick. For those that did not know, and you're wondering why Breakpoints window has got me off on this tangent, right? Well, it's all tied in together. So here's the deal. There have been major changes to Visual Studio 2010. I think most people know that. And not the least of which has been the changes to the breakpoints window. Here I'm going to just set a few breakpoints. I'm just hitting F9 to set a few breakpoints here. Don't really care about the lines they're on or anything. It's really more about the breakpoints window at this point. However, I wonder if you've noticed the changes to the breakpoints window. First and foremost, we have a labels column. I'll get to that. And a whole bunch of other stuff. But before I get to the changes, I want to explain to you how these changes were possible. So in case you didn't know, Visual Studio 2010 was completely rewritten in WPF. And I get off on this tangent sometimes for obvious reasons. I'm often asked, and I don't know why I'm asked this, people often ask me, is Microsoft behind WPF? And the minute they do that, I pull up Visual Studio 2010 and go, well, let me ask you, we rewrote Visual Studio in WPF. What do you think? You know, I mean, we didn't rewrite Visual Studio in any other technology, and we've had a ton of other technologies come along. We haven't fundamentally changed Visual Studio, but WPF has been around long enough and is saturated enough. We're not going anywhere with this thing. I mean, hang on, let me rephrase that. I can see that on the blogs now. Microsoft guy says, we're not going anywhere with WPF. No. Here's what I meant. WPF is not going away, as near as I can tell, ever. It's going to be around for quite some time. You know, obviously, it'll probably go away when we're old and retired, but it is the major technology we're using for presentation, particularly rich presentation, on the client side. So, with that said, we rewrote Visual Studio in WPF, and that is why you have all this great stuff happening all of a sudden in Visual Studio. That's why I'm able to use my control key and zoom in and out on the editor, right? And all this other stuff is because we rewrote this thing in WPF. So anyway, with that said, let's take a look then at the breakpoints window. Major changes here. First and foremost, you can see we've got this labels column I mentioned before. Now, in prior incarnations of Visual Studio, if you wanted to sort your stuff, well, too bad. You really were stuck sorting it based on what we gave you. And if you didn't like sorting it based on what we gave you, okay. But now you actually have the ability to apply your own tokens to these breakpoints and have a little more organization. So, for example, I can select several breakpoints here. I just hold down my control key and select a bunch of breakpoints. Right click and go to Edit Labels. And then I can actually then just say, okay, well, let's type in a label here. I'm going to call this Bubba. And then I click on Add. Now notice it adds it to a list. I could keep adding labels here if I want to, and just keep going on and on and on, right? George, right? There we go. So now this actually has two labels applied to it, Bubba and George. There you go, Bubba George. And if I want to, then I can go to some of the others here. Right click, Edit Labels, and then say, ice cream. Now, interestingly enough, I can, put some spaces here. I can then select from the existing ones as well if I want to, and make them part of the deal. So there you go, George and ice cream. Now the order does matter here, so you can see I put them in this order. I may decide to edit the labels. I believe I can change the order by doing it this way. I'll say ice cream and George. Actually, I don't think that's going to work. No, okay. There we go. I've never really tried to mess with the order too much. That's okay, though, because if the order gets wonky, we now have the ability to search these things. Now, this is pretty darn powerful. Let's say, for example, I want to look at every breakpoint that has the letter B anywhere in it, right? So I type a B, and actually, no, it has the letter I anywhere in it. I type the letter I and press Enter. Boom. Now, you would think it would filter, right? Some kind of filtering would take place, and in fact it did. But the problem is, everything here has the letter I somewhere in it. And something, every one of these breakpoints has the word something in it, so boom, there's your letter I. That's the reason I shifted the letter I, by the way. The demo wouldn't have worked very well if I'd done the B. But there it is, the letter I. The letter I is in the word condition as well, so it just wouldn't have worked. What I need to do is understand that by default, this thing's searching in all visible columns, and change it to search in just the labels column. When I do that, bam, instantly I get filtering. Good filtering. So you can see here now, I've got it filtered for those things that have the letter I in the label. And of course, I can expand it. I can make it, deeper. It's a contains operation for the search, so you can get much more complex here. Now, here's the deal, and what I'm about to tell you now is probably one of the most important things you're going to hear from me today. Here's the thing. Everything you do in the breakpoints window, listen carefully. If you're eating lunch and smacking, stop smacking for a minute. Listen to me very carefully now. Everything you do in the breakpoints window, everything, every action, will only impact what you can currently see. Or put another way, everything you do in the breakpoints window now only impacts the results of the current search criteria. I'll prove it. You remember in the old days when you used to delete all breakpoints? Well, guess what? You no longer just delete all breakpoints. You delete all breakpoints matching the current search criteria. What about disabling the breakpoints or enabling them? Same deal. They all have the addition of matching the current search criteria. So if I disable all these breakpoints, and of course the Dark Angel of Demos is going to visit me, so just pretend like the button actually worked. Yay, it works to enable, it just doesn't disable. But when I disable all those and clear my search, you can see it only disabled the ones that I could currently see. So everything you do in here will only impact what you can currently see. Now, here's the deal. We've also included some other things that you may want to take advantage of, like the export and import abilities. Now, this is pretty powerful. And I need to clear the air on this one, too. A lot of people think we included the export and import abilities as some kind of like funky backup for your breakpoints. That is not the reason we included them, not at all. I mean, yes, that's a bonus, I guess. But when was the last time you accidentally blew away every breakpoint you had? So I guess it could be helpful, but if you're blowing away your breakpoints on a regular basis, on a wholesale fashion, you got bigger problems. The reason we included the export and import breakpoint ability is so you can share your breakpoints with other team members. The whole point of this was being able to share breakpoints with other team members. And what that means then is if you're going to do that, you need to, well, let me show you how this stuff works. So I'm going to go ahead and export all my breakpoints. And it's an XML file, and you can tell I've done this for several customers lately, Exxon, BP, Tyson, and I'll do it now for you guys. We'll call this, let's see, LIDNUG. There we go. And click on Save. Boom. Now I've saved it all. Now I'm going to blow all these things away, right? Because I got to do this, even though I said that's not why we did it. But I'm pretending now to be one of your partners who doesn't have the breakpoints. And then your partner then would import the breakpoint from a file. And they'd pick the file and bring them back in. So bring in the LIDNUG file, and yay, there they all are. So that's cool, right? I mean, that's pretty darn nice to have. That's the good news. Here comes the bad news. And it's not really that bad of news, but it's news you need to know. If you're going to do this, you need to make sure you version your breakpoints along with your source code. If you do not, here's what could happen. So here we go now. I've got source code and breakpoints synced up, and now I'm going to change source code without updating the breakpoints, right? Okay. Now when I go to import the breakpoints, or your partner goes to import the breakpoints, they've got breakpoints on lines where there's no code. This is what can happen, right? And everything shifts, by the way, right? It's all ugly now. I mean, this is just nasty looking. So that's why you need to make sure that you're exporting your breakpoints and keeping them in version or in sync with your source code. I originally thought this was going to be quite the pain to deal with, but now after a year of seeing people actually use it, it's not painful at all. It's actually pretty darn easy. So originally I was kind of down on it. I didn't think it was going to be as effective as it turned out to be, but it's actually quite effective, believe it or not. Okay. So there you go. I've got a question real quick before I move on, so I'm just going to ask that. What are my recommendations for speeding up the start of a VS? Boy, ASIC, you are the king of asking questions that are, whoa, okay. Let me see. Let me see if I can address that later on. That's when I said ask me questions, I generally meant questions along the lines of what I'm showing you. But you can ask me anything, that's fine. As far as speeding up the startup, probably there's some switches that'll kill the splash screen. Actually, that doesn't really help much. You've got some. I would minimize the loading of third-party tools if you don't need them. I think what a lot of people do is they'll install a lot of third-party stuff, but not uninstall it when they don't need it. And certainly the number one thing that happens when people have slow startups or they get mad at Visual Studio because it seems to be crashing or whatever. And what we found over and over and over and over again is invariably it's some third-party tool, usually a third-party control or some type of add-in or something like that. Now, most notably or recently with Visual Studio 2010, the culprit is going to probably be some type of extension. So make sure when you're installing extensions, and there's tons of great ones, make sure that you pick, an extension that, generally has a lot of people. Well, here, let me show you. So if I go to Tools in my Extension Manager, so I'm going to go to Tools Extension Manager. When you're looking at the tools, it shows you basically, some of the interesting stuff going on with it. But when you actually go in and this is all the stuff I have installed. We go to the online gallery. Hang on. So when you're looking at the tools online, it actually shows you the number of downloads and the rating. Pay attention to that, and also pay attention to who puts the control out, because make sure it's a trusted source or semi-trusted source, right? If it's got a lot of downloads and a pretty high rating, that generally means that okay, it doesn't suck. People have used it. People have used it and loved it enough to vote on it. Now look at this. This is very common. 325,000 downloads and 76 votes. It's very, very common to see that. People very rarely will vote unless they just totally hate the product. Will very rarely vote positively. Or it's very rare to say anything positive about some of this stuff, right? I've got, 20,000 blog readers every month or more now. I think it's like 30,000 now. But anyway, and I'm lucky if I get a comment or two every other week or so. So, the percentage of people who actually positively vote or talk about something is extremely low compared to the actual usage. So 76 people voted, and this is the result. This is a pretty darn good little control here. I don't even know what it is. VS Commands. All right, perfect. I just picked it at random. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty trustworthy one, right? So those are the ones you'd look at. Okay. Now, having said that, and that's why, remember I got off on that tangent because the question was, how do I improve the startup? And that is minimize third-party controls, minimize installation of extensions, and for the extensions you do put in, make sure they're trustworthy and have a good track record. Okay, so moving right along. Data tips. This is my buddy Clint. I've been traveling on the road quite a bit, and my buddy Clint loves this one, data tips. This one's pretty easy. Basically, you go in your code, and you set a breakpoint, and you hit it, right? So, let me get my deep stack. Come on, deep stack. Or not. Okay, that was weird. Let's try that again. Hang on a second. We're having weirdness. I've got some strangeness going on here. I may actually have to set a breakpoint. Haven't had to do that in a while. Okay. All right. So let me try that again here. Boom. And man. Normally I just run the cursor. I've been having some strangeness there. All right. So now I hit my deep stack. And let me start all over again because I just did a demo not too long ago. So here we've got, if you put your mouse over a variable, you get a data tip. If you haven't seen that before, most everybody has, I expect, right? That's not new. But what is new, and you can barely see it, is this little push pin to the right of the data tip here. That's actually a push pin. And if I click on that, it pins the data tip down. That actually creates a pin to source or pinned data tip. You know it's a pinned data tip, by the way. Let me just kind of zoom in a little bit, because there's this little push pin to the left here. And the little push pin tells you it's a variable pin to line 24. Now, interestingly enough, you can click and drag this thing and pin it to different lines if you want to. Okay, so great. What's the point of a pinned data tip? Well, the point of a pinned data tip then is, as you're debugging your code and stepping through it, the pinned data tip moves out of the way when it's no longer relevant. It stays pinned to the line of code you pinned it to, and therefore will get out of your way. So this is a local variable D. I don't need to see D when I'm moving on to some other method, so it just gets the heck out of my way. So that's kind of useful. Now, there's its cousin. If you don't like the pinned data tip, maybe you want a more dashboardy type of thing, or you want to mix and match, and most people these days are mixing and matching. You can unpin it and create what's called a floating or floater data tip here. I call them floaters. They're actually technically known as floating data tips. And a floating data tip does exactly what it sounds like. It stays floating and kind of up and in your face, no matter where you go. Now, again, we use floating data tips for more dashboard type activities, typically variables that are more, broader in scope. And then for local type variables, we tend to use pinned data tips because then they get out of our way when we don't care about them. Now, there's even more than that. There's this, if you put your mouse, you saw as I put my mouse over this, I get this little control panel. I can close, unpin, or do this expand to see comments. You can actually now put comments in with these data tips. Now, that's pretty powerful stuff, man. Now, for the longest time, when I was on the road, I kept threatening to copy and paste War and Peace into here because I never knew what the upper limit of this thing was, and I like knowing what the upper limit is. Well, guess what? I actually did succeed in pasting War and Peace in there. A, I don't recommend you do that because it will crash Visual Studio or at least slow it down considerably. And B, please, the moral of this story is, it's okay to put comments, just don't put the text of War and Peace in there because eventually you've got to come back and read it or somebody else does. So, even though you can get crazy with the comments, don't. All right, so having said that, now you can see I've got this lovely little data tip, and all this is great, but that's not awesome. Let me show you awesome. How many times have you been debugging, you set up your little data tips and everything, you're all, you're hanging out, and then you stop debugging, and then you go, oh my God, I forgot what that last value of D was. Well, if you got a pinned data tip, not a problem. Because all you got to do is put your mouse over the little push pin, and it will show you the value from the last debug session. So if you've got pinned data tips, you never have to worry about if you forgot what a value was, because it will show you the value and the comments and everything else. It's all there, like Prego spaghetti sauce. It's great stuff. So there you have it. And if you want to share data tips with other team members, you can do that too. All you got to do is go to Debug on your menu bar, and there's a selection for exporting and importing data tips. Now again, data tips are just like breakpoints. That when you do this, you need to version them with your code because they only remember, lines that they're attached to. So, and variables too. But so remember, when you're doing your data tips, you version it just like I said with breakpoints. Version it along with your code, and you'll be fine. Okay. So that's that. And what else we got for you today? Help. Help's kind of interesting as well. Folks, this one really depends on a number of factors. If you have Service Pack 1 for Visual Studio installed, then I tend to recommend you use offline help. Now, prior to Service Pack 1, the offline help or the local help was really bad. Not the content so much, but the ability to search it and have your index and your favorites and all the things we had in all the prior versions of Visual Studio pretty much, they just went away all of a sudden in 2010. Whoever messed that up figured out they messed it up, and they brought it all back with Service Pack 1. So if you're running Service Pack 1 for Visual Studio 2010, you're fine. Offline help is actually probably a little better than the online stuff. Now, having said that, if you prefer online or you're using online, let me show you that. Because online help's pretty darn cool if you know how to use it. So I'm going to do a view help, and I think I've got online. Let me see. I'm either about to demo offline or online help. I think it's online though. Let me see here. Yep, there we go. Oh, and you get to see my appliance delivered. Yes, I'm having some appliances delivered. There we go. A little plug for Home Depot. All right, so, but there we go. I'm going to go to script free. This is what most people see when they go to online help, and you shouldn't have to suffer this. This is not cool, in my opinion. But if you look up and to the right, you'll see there's 3 options there: classic, lightweight, and script free. Now, I got to warn you. Some of you will see the word preferences and not see this. If you click on the word preferences, the link for preferences, then you'll get the choice for classic, lightweight, and script free. It's all depending on whether you're logged in or not. So one way or another, you're either going to see this or the link for preferences. Click on preferences, you'll see this. Regardless of how you get here, though, once you're here, click on classic. And that's going to give you your table of contents that we've always known and loved from help systems. A lot of people don't know that's there. And the best part is, once you've got it, when you do searches and you find a help topic, or whenever you hit F1 inside Visual Studio and you find a help topic, it's going to come in and automatically sync up with the table of contents here, so you can browse through the table of contents. This is pretty darn powerful. I would say this is pretty darn important for you to remember, because I often find that a particular help topic doesn't do much for me, but then as I start clicking through other things related to it, I go, oh yeah, and I find what I'm looking for. So browsing through your help, particularly the help contents, can be quite useful. Okay, cool. Let's see, make sure I'm not missing something. Okay, so I've got a quick question. Outlining disappears after editing file externally, like changes from source control. Okay. Is that a question or a statement? If outlining does disappear, if outlining is disappearing and you want to bring it back, it's pretty easy to bring back. You just go to Edit, Outlining, and here I'll just turn off outlining. And so if there's no outlining, just go to Edit, Outlining, and go to Start Automatic Outlining, and that will turn it back on again for you if it disappears. Sometimes it will disappear. I've seen it occasionally, but if it continually happens, that's something I would definitely want to give me some detail on and see if it's something that the support team, the Visual Studio team knows about. All right, so there's that. There's help is your friend, and that pretty much is the 2010 stuff. I'm going to pause for a minute. Did this help you, folks? Did you get anything out of this? Give me some feedback through the Q&A pane. Are you cool with that? Did you get any value out of that so far? I'm just going to delete that comment. Just give me some feedback. Yes, you like it. No, you hate it. You still want to hunt me down in the parking lot? Okay, good. So this is pretty much, remember what I was telling you about how the number of people who actually read a blog or use a control or whatever, the very small percentage actually respond? That's what you're looking at here. Classic case in point. Still going to hunt me down. But yeah, and that's cool, and you expect that, right? So for any of you, if you ever start your own blog or anything like that, just realize that people love, people may like what you're doing or at least want to hear about it, but they may not respond. That's okay. All right, so tips for almost any version, though. Now I'm shifting gears, boys and girls, and I appreciate the response, by the way, from the folks who did respond. It's good to get some response there. Thanks a lot, folks. Jachendra, Jonathan, Ilyas Wushu. Wow, I'm sorry, man, totally. Gosh, Alvin, thanks. If you're saying like outlining change, wait, hang on, this is something different. If you're saying like outlining change when you get from source control, make sure your SUO files are not included in source control. Yes, that could be it as well. By the way, Alvin makes an interesting point. You shouldn't be including your SUO files with source control. That is a long-standing thing. So if any of you are including your solution user options in source control, that's very bad mojo, because that is for you specifically, you as the individual user on that particular machine. You don't want to be checking that in, someone else gets it, because then if that SUO file gets jacked, all your favorite settings go away. I mean, that's where all your colors and basically everything that makes it you personalize it goes. So that SUO file is pretty important. Have you guys actually looked into the SUO file? It's not, it's not that big deal. It's just a binary file that you can kind of read if you have a little thing that translates it. And I've actually used it often to dig in and find out where stuff goes. That's, that's where a lot of your stuff that you export goes. Your data tips go there. Your breakpoints go there. If you've ever created solution folders, they go there. A lot of stuff goes there that is uniquely yours. So anyway, but I digress. Let's cruise on to for any tips for any version then, and we'll finish up here. My number one tip for any version of Visual Studio is, without a doubt, item and project templates. I am absolutely stunned at the number of people who do not even know that you can create your own templates. Now, consider this for a minute. Here's why I'm stunned. Because you've used Microsoft products for years. I know you've used and probably created templates in Word and Excel and PowerPoint, right? You definitely use them. I mean, unless you've lived in a cave, you used a template in Word and Excel and PowerPoint. You've used them in Visual Studio. Whenever you create a new project, you're using a template. But here's the deal. You can create templates very, very, very easily in Visual Studio. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say I've got a project here, and I'll go back to that console app I created to simplify things a bit. So let's say you've got a class. And you're always creating this class, right? Whatever it is. This class has to be done a certain way. Maybe at work you've got certain documentation you got to have on the class, or it's got to be, God knows, whatever it is, right? And you do it over and over and over again. I've actually seen at some companies, there's a little document, either in a Word doc or printed out, usually in a Word doc, that somebody will pop up. They'll have on one monitor, and they'll copy and paste and change this class and do it, whatever, right? It's just crazy. That's just the definition of insanity. Well, here's what we'll do. So I'm going to add a class here, right? Add a class. I'll just call it class 1. The name isn't important because it's going to turn into a template anyway. So there you go, class 1. And then I'm just going to decorate it up with stuff that, maybe my work requires me to do. I'm a big regular expression guy, so there we go, regular expressions. And, maybe it's got some junk that has to go at the beginning, and then your work requires, work stuff, details, right? And then maybe there's just some stuff you're putting in, and I'm putting comments, but it can be whatever you want. I don't care what it is, right? Just more, crap. All right, there you go. Now, in addition to that, this particular class takes advantage of, let's say, I don't know, how about the JScript library? I'm going to right-click on my references, add a reference. And when you use this class, you want the JScript library available to you. I know, a little insane, but stay with me, right? Microsoft JScript. There we go. Boom. Okay, done. Right? All done. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm now going to turn this into a template so I never have to do this again, or when I do it again, it's to really make a minor update or something. So what do? I go to File on my menu bar, and I click on Export Template. Export Template. There we go. So when I do that, it wants to save the solution, which is fine. And you got two choices now. You can create a template for an entire project or for an individual item. This is an individual item. And then if you have multiple projects in a solution you're working off of, you need to choose the correct project from this list. I only have one, so it's real easy for me. Then you click on Next. It says, great. What file do you want to create the template from? Now, I know these are checkboxes, and I know that checkboxes are supposed to be multi-select, right? Unfortunately, that is not what's going on here, so do not fool yourself. Do not fool yourself. These should be radio buttons, but clearly somebody doesn't know interfaces well enough on this dialog to make it that way. So these are checkboxes, but they're single select checkboxes, so don't get sucked into that hole, right? So, all right, so here we go. Class 1 will be the template. Click on Next. Now, hang on. Now comes the fun part. Does this thing use one or more custom references that you want included when somebody uses this class? You bet. It uses JScript. And if I had more custom stuff in here, I'd check that off too. But it uses the Microsoft JScript library. Now notice, as soon as you do that, it gives you a warning. You've selected one or more assembly references that are not pre-installed with Visual Studio. Having these references may prevent the use of this template if the user does not have the reference assemblies installed. Be warned. Basically what it's saying is, look, dude, if somebody uses this template and they don't have these assemblies, then, either in the GAC or in their assembly path, they're not going to be able to use your class. They're going to get mad at you. And rather than hunting me down in the parking lot, they're going to hunt you down in the parking lot. So just be warned, right? And I've only seen it done one time where somebody forgot and screwed up on that. But trust me, the anger level associated with that makes me never want to see it again. All right, so I'll just click on next. Now, this is the part that, for whatever reason, seems to throw people. This is simplicity itself. For the template name, real easy. Template name, keep it about 50 to 60 characters, short and somewhat descriptive. I'm going to call this LIDNUG class template. Right? Real easy, right? Nothing really major. It's the template description that is the key, not the name, the description. The name, make it short but descriptive. But the description, I want you to write as much as you possibly can in here. I'm not kidding. You write as much description as you can. There is no such thing as too little information ever. All right? This is the deal. If you are not fully descriptive in the description area, you are going to find yourself either with A, people not using your template because they don't know what it's used for, B, people using your template but realizing it's the wrong template, particularly if there are other templates with similar names, or C, me finding you in the parking lot. That seems to be a general theme and beating you senseless. Look, just do it. Be very descriptive in your template description. It is your one and only chance to make it abundantly clear what that template should be used for. Take advantage of it. Okay, with that said, this is really hard. The icon image and the preview image, here, you know what you do here? Nothing. They're totally worthless. Don't even use them. All right, now moving on. Output location. Here you go to, now here's the interesting part. All templates, whether they be project templates or item templates, all templates are exported as zip files, and they all go to the same place. They go to, your name, my documents, if you will, Visual Studio version, my exported templates, and then the name of the template.zip, right? So that's real easy. They will all go there, whether they be project or item templates, they all go there. My exported templates is like just a big old tank, big old storage tank of all your templates. But because the template goes there, or just because the template goes to my exported templates, does not mean it is usable. In fact, it is not usable because it goes there. It becomes usable when it's imported, and I use that term in quotes, when it's imported into Visual Studio. I'll show you what I mean there. I don't know why they use that term. It's very intimidating. There's nothing special about it. It's not importing anything. It's copying the zip file to a different location. I'll show you that in a minute. So when you get to the bottom, automatically import the template into Visual Studio. That means you want to start using the thing right away. Yes, of course. So you leave that checked. Display an Explorer window on the Output Files folder. That will pop up an Explorer window after you've done this. So after you've gotten on the other side of this thing and you've created the template, it will open up an Explorer window to show you the zip file. After the third time you've done this, you'll be like, oh, look, another zip file. Yay. So you'll probably stop checking the bottom box, but 99% of the time, you're going to leave the top box checked, right? Okay, so I'm going to leave them both checked to show you what's going on. I'm going to click on Finish. It's actually now going to create, and you can see here more stuff because it looks like Exxon was the last people I did demos for. There we go. All right, so it creates the class in the My Exported Template. So you can see there, LIDNUG class template, right? Cool, got it. And what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean jack. But it also made a copy of them and put copies into My Documents Visual Studio version templates. You see this templates folder? Templates, and this was an item template, so I'm going to go to item templates. And let me get rid of some of this extra junk in here. And you can see there the LIDNUG class template. So there it is, LIDNUG class template. What that means is it's immediately available when I go to add a new item. You can see the LIDNUG class template is immediately available. But that's not good enough. If you're going to go to the trouble of creating these things, then you should take the extra effort and organize them as well. So just because you created them isn't enough. Now that you know where they go, create folders. Here, I'll just click on New Folder. I'm going to call this LIDNUG, and then I'm going to put the LIDNUG class template inside the LIDNUG folder. By using folders, you organize it better, so when you go to create a new item, you have a LIDNUG section here, or your company name, or whatever, and then boom, it's much better organized. And then you can add it in. Now, I'm actually going to use it, but before I do, I'm going to create a new project so you can see it from start to finish. There it is, brand new project now. You'll notice the references do not reference the JScript library. Now I go to add our LIDNUG stuff, add it in, and it adds the JScript reference, gives me my stuff, and I'm ready to rock and roll. So if you've not been using item templates to this point, hopefully I've convinced you this is a good idea. Now it gets better. Once you've got a whole bunch of items together, let's say, let me give you a classic example. I was working with Hewlett-Packard many months ago. I guess it's been, gosh, about 8 or 9 months now. And I showed them exactly what I'm showing you today, and they just went nuts because they loved it. They used to have their web developers go through several pages of stuff. What they do is they take the MVC template and then go through several pages of stuff and organize it a particular way. And they'd always go through this thing. It would take, a couple of hours to do all this. It was just insane. But they weren't aware of the template capability. So what I showed them how to do is I said, well, look, let me show you how to create a project template. And that's what I'm going to show you guys now. Once you've got the items organized the way you want, if you find yourself creating projects all the time, certain types of projects, well, get them organized the way you want, get the interfaces looking the way you want, and everything else, because they had like copyright stuff they had to put in, and the interface had to look a certain way, and just 20 billion things. But once you got things looking the way you want, go to File, Export Template, and instead of exporting an item, export the whole project as a template. And make sure to choose the correct project. Click on Next. Notice it jumps. It's actually easier to create project templates than item templates. It jumps immediately to the last screen. Give the template a name. I'll call this LIDNUG project template. Now, this is very generic. I don't like this name. It works for the demo, right? The description, you can redeem yourself if you screw up with the name in the description, right? Again, I don't care. I think icon and preview image are completely useless. Don't use them. Notice it's creating a zip file, just like I said it would. And I click on Finish, and there's our zip file. LIDNUG project template zip, right? Because I said to import it, import in quotes, and we'll go to our templates, project templates. There's the LIDNUG stuff, and I got XYZ company in there too, and Exxon. Oh, Exxon's going to love me. There we go. I'll create a new folder, and we'll call it LIDNUG. There we go. I'm real big on organizing your templates. Don't just throw templates in there. Create folders, make it clean. And then once I've done that, then when I go to create a new project, you can see the LIDNUG area here in the new projects. And there's the LIDNUG project template, and I can give it a name and so on and so forth. So, all right, boys and girls, hopefully you're sold on that. Looks like I got a couple of questions. What is this? Okay. What is this? Ilya's watch Channel 9. Good. Looks like an ad. Dev Days. Can someone be a big regular expression person? I'm not saying the thing. I'm slightly insane. Yeah, or a little pregnant. Yeah, you're right. Sweet. Love how easy. Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's just insanely easy. I guess Brian's my man. I got to pay him $20 later because he hooked me up. I'm not sure what this is, Ilya. This Dev Days, is that the probably the new, I know we've got some of the new features coming up with the IDE. Speaking of which, though, while I'm thinking about it, remember when I showed you the extension manager? People often ask me what's the #1 extension I recommend. Hands down, the #1 extension I recommend is the productivity tools. The productivity power tools. Bottom line, if you don't have these installed, you need these installed. Period. End of story. Right? Productivity power tools, 750,000 downloads. My buddy Sean, he's a PM over a lot of the teams. My buddy Dustin both recommend these. Dustin Campbell, right? Sean Labrie. Man, these are awesome. If you have not downloaded these, by the way, the reason I bring that up is the next version of Visual Studio has a lot of the features from this Power Tools already in it. It's all part of the deal, right? We just demoed that at TechEd. So what you're going to start seeing going forward is a lot of the stuff that will go into the next version of Visual Studio will show up in these extensions. So make sure to get your extensions. By the way, I'm also a huge fan of VS Commands, although I didn't realize that's what I was playing with before, and NuGet, if you haven't played with NuGet. Very, very awesome. Okay, so I think, Brian, how are we doing on time, man? I'm not sure. I got kind of turned around on my time a little bit. Should I just keep going? If people want to stay, they stay. If people want to go, they go. How are we going to play this?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So I'm just.
Oh, we can do another 30 minutes if you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just keep going until I run out, folks, because I know we kind of got off on our little timing there. So if you want to stay, stay. If you need to go, please feel free to, and I apologize for the little timing snafu. But I'll keep on rolling. The next thing I want to show you is trace points. This one was also a big shocker to me. I don't know if you guys know or have heard of, but hopefully you have. There's, in my mind, on this planet, when it comes to .NET, there's two people you need to follow if you're serious about debugging. All right? Bottom line, one of them, John Robbins from Wintellect. If you don't know John Robbins from Wintellect, no, he's not dead. He's alive. John Robbins from Wintellect. Right there. This guy, honestly, and a lot of people don't even know this, but my book, the whole book is kind of a funky homage to him. He is probably the best I've ever seen at debugging. I learned from him years and years ago, and just an awesome guy. So he's one guy you need to look at, John Robbins. They call him the Bug Slayer. Now, another person you want to look at works for Microsoft, Tess. And Tess, oh man, I've got Tess's blog. Let me just go to my blog. This is why I have my blog, so I can remember my stuff. What? No, I don't have it on there. Oh, I thought I did. Wow, I'm gonna have to put that back on there. I swear I thought I had it on there. Okay, well, Tess Fernandez is her name. If you haven't been to Tess Fernandez's blog, this is awesome too. You know, broken it is, fix it you should. She's just epic. I mean, she's awesome, awesome, awesome. Probably two of the best debuggers I've ever seen. And they're prolific bloggers too. So definitely want to check it out. Tess is more ASP.NET. She's an ASP.NET escalation engineer. John Robbins is deep into the product, right into the client. He's the dude, you know, all over WinDebug and all kinds of freakiness going on with it. So the two of them combined, two of the best debuggers I've ever seen. Having said that, one of the coolest things you're ever going to find in Visual Studio for debugging is trace points. A lot of people don't know about trace points, so let me show you. Basically, breakpoints do exactly what you think they do. Breakpoints break. I mean, that is the role of a breakpoint. The job of a breakpoint is to break when it hits code, right? I mean, it's real easy to figure out. However, and I'm just going to clear this out here. However, what if you don't want the program to stop? You just want to have information print out along the way, right? What do? Well, here's what you can do. You set a breakpoint, but then you right-click and you go to Win Hit. Win Hit. When you click on Win Hit, that will turn your breakpoint, if you say print message, from a breakpoint into a trace point. Actually, technically, what makes it a trace point is if you leave this continue execution check, just to be clear. But I'm going to print a message. Now, the default message is it prints function name and thread name and all kinds of junk. Wow. Yeah, not liking that at all. In this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to have it print out. Let's see, what do I want to do? I want to say the value of another param is, and I'm going to do, then you put a $, and it will execute whatever you put in front of the dollar. Sorry, not $. You put the curly braces, and it will determine the value of whatever you put in curly braces. So, in this case, another param. There we go, curly braces. So there, the value of another param is curly bracket another param. There we go. There we go. Click on OK. And obviously, to make sure I have it right, I probably copy it before I went into this dialog. And then, there we go. And that's me going through puberty, I guess, and stop hitting that note. And then hit that. There we go. Then make sure I got it right. I knew I had it right, but just to be safe. Same thing here. Maybe I'll do the same thing with eLocal. I'll copy eLocal, and then I'll come on in here, do a win hit, print a message, continue execution, and say the value of blah eLocal is curly bracket eLocal, so it'll evaluate anything. It'll run any code, evaluate anything. You could call a function name here or something if you wanted. Click on OK, done. Now, I'll go ahead and execute my code, right? Get my little dialog here. Now, before I do anything, it's going to spit stuff out in the output window. So I'm going to show it up here. It looks like it's nice and clear here. All right, so we should be in good shape. I'm going to go ahead then and deep stack, and there you go. And it looks like I had an extra one in there I didn't know about, hit the dough. But you can see here, you notice what it just did down here? These trace points did not stop the execution of the program, but they printed out messages to the output window so I could see what was going on. They're perfect for, they're very, very, very useful when you have an intermittent problem that you just can't seem to nail down. You can do trace points, and trace points are like breadcrumbs, and then when it crashes, you can say, well, it got all the way up to this trace point, and then I don't see any more trace points after that, so this is clearly, you know, this is right around the area where it's having a problem. So trace points are extremely powerful for narrowing down or kind of, you know, getting into the depth of a problem. And they're great because they're non-intrusive. The code just runs. So it's pretty awesome. All right, so that's trace points. It looks like I may have another question. Nope, not there. Let's see. Got it. Oh, Sarah's here. Yay! Sarah's here. It's $40. I'm going to ask for $40. By the way, when is the next version of Visual Studio coming out? Don't know. I know the beta will be coming out soon. I'm not sure how soon. I can just say soon and be fine with it. But given the fact that we just demoed a lot of the new features of TechEd, probably a safe bet, you know, would be probably within 6 to 12 months, just start getting some hardcore beta going on. And then, you know, traditionally, I guess, you know, another 6 to 12 after that, we'll go through beta 2 and probably, you know, get a product. Somewhere around those lines. Yeah, it's rough. I can't give you exact dates, even if I knew them, which I don't, by the way. I purposely, for the most part, I purposefully try not to deal with anything you can't get your hands on. So you'll never see me blog about anything you can't access right away. So even though we did the demo at TechEd, I'm not blogging about that until it comes out in beta, and then I'll start blogging about it because then you can download it and start using it. And that's kind of my deal now. And people ask me, and a lot of people internally at Microsoft give me a little crap about it too, because they're like, well, you should be talking about it, and I'm like, yes, but no. If you yourself can't get your hands on it, I don't think it's fair for me to start talking about it. A, because you can't get your hands on it right away, so what will be the point? You'll forget about it. And B, because I'm trying to keep the faith and trying to be just like any of you would be out there trying to experiment with some of this stuff. So if it's not publicly available, you generally won't see me talk about it. Okay, until it becomes publicly available. So, having said that, I don't know, that may be a little bit more than you wanted to hear, but I figured I'd throw that out there, just so you know some of my philosophy. The next thing I want to talk about, call stack breakpoints, and we're almost to the end, boys and girls. Dang, I can't believe this, though. We've actually had 40 people stay with us this whole time. Call stack breakpoints. If you didn't know you could do this, pretty darn cool. Very useful when you're deep into a stack. So when I'm deep in a stack, right, and I've got a breakpoint here. I'm just going to run this code. Deep in a stack, and by the way, this comes straight from John Robbins. I didn't know this till I learned it from John Robbins. When you're deep in a stack and you're looking at your call stack window, a lot of times what you'll do is you'll be kind of, you know, you'll double click on somewhere in the call stack and go, wow, you know, I'd really like to stop there, right? You'll be looking at a place in the call stack that you'd like to stop. Well, if you just click on that line in the call stack and hit the function key F9, it will actually set a breakpoint there. And yeah, you can click here and do it as well. Actually, I don't think you can. Let me try it. Let's see. No, it'll let me do it. Okay. But, you know, it's just not as elegant. If you're looking here, you go, oh, yeah, look at that. And you can hit the function key F9 to set breakpoints. By the way, if you don't want to set a breakpoint, you can right-click on the breakpoint, go to breakpoint, and do, like, when hit, and turn it into a trace point. So anything you can do with a regular breakpoint, you can do with breakpoints that you set in the call stack window. The moral of this story being, you can set breakpoints in the call stack window. And that being said, once you're wound deep into a stack like I am here, I'm deep in a stack. Now when I hit the function key F5 to continue, boom, it will stop at the breakpoints that I've set. Or run any trace points. And we had one trace point, and as just a default, so it gives me this crap. I'm just not a big fan of the default message for trace points. I think they're very unuseful. Which, by the way, in my blog somewhere, I do have a set of instructions on how you can change the default message that's put into trace points if you want. All right, so there's that. And I think we're almost at the end now, boys and girls. Thanks for sticking down through this, because normally I have to stop early. I think there's probably about 2 or 3 more slides, 2 more slides, and one of them's the end slide. So multiple startup projects. If you didn't know you could do this, very, very, very cool. If you've got, multiple projects, let's say you've got a client and a server, right? Classic scenario, and you want to start them both up. So here I'm just going to add, pretend like one's client, one's server. Just pick one. What you can do is you can actually go into the properties. Just click on your solution, go into its properties. A little button here goes into the properties. You go into the properties for the solution. By default, it has a single startup project, but you can actually have it start up with multiple startup projects and choose how they start up. If you want them both to start, and say, okay, we'll start. Or let's say I want one to start and one to start without debugging, right? You know how that works. Like, again, won't get into the technical details of that. I have plenty of that on my blog. But you pick how you want it. By the way, if you don't like the order, let's say 8 here needs to start up before 1. You click on it and then click the up arrow to change the order. So it'll start 8, then it'll start 1. So you can do multiple startup projects if you didn't know. By the way, the classic when you're doing single startup is a single project is in bold. But when you do multiple startup, the solution is in bold, indicating you're doing multiple startup projects. Just so you know. So some nice little indicators there. And then last but not least, moving between matching braces. Classic. Had it around for many, many years in C++ and C#, by the way. I think it may be coming to VB. Can't guarantee it. It's real simple. If you've got a curly brace or any other kind of brace and you want to move from that to the matching brace, do Control, close, square bracket. Control, close, square bracket. See here? Control, close, square bracket. What that will do is actually move to the matching brace. So Control and jump between them. Right there. Control, close, square bracket. You can do that between any brackets, anywhere. And by the way, the word bracket's a very loose term. So bracket actually includes parentheses. Here, if I do the open paren, Control, close, square bracket, it jumps to the close paren. By the way, this is very useful, particularly when you're using parentheses like, you're doing arguments for a method call, because if you add shift in the equation, Control, shift, close, square bracket, it highlights everything between the brackets. Then you can copy and then paste somewhere else. And that works for any of them, right? Control, shift, close, square bracket highlights everything between the brackets. So you can do that with curly braces, you can do it with parentheses, and yes, you can even do it with square brackets, actual square brackets, if you want to. Control, close, square bracket is your friend. And that, boys and girls, is that. Wow, thank you all for sticking it out. I appreciate you staying out there. Looks like I got one more question, then I'll hand it over to Brian and we'll wrap up. Can you start the web application from local IIS when you hit F5? Web application from local IIS when you hit F5. Yes, if I think I know what you're asking me, can you configure it so it, instead of using the local web server? Yes, you can actually. All you have to do for web projects when you do that is, hang on a second here, I got some weirdness. But if you've got a web project, I don't know if I actually have a web project here, I don't. But yeah, if you've got a, you said web application, which is a very specific thing, right? So if I go to a web app, you should be able to configure it to start from local IIS in the properties. There we go. So here I am. So now I've got a web application. It's just very quickly going to go. If I actually go into the properties for this project, if I'm guessing your question right, one of the things you've got is when we go into the builds. Let's see, maybe it's not the build. Here we go. The web. From the web, the start action. You can change the start action, but you can also change the servers, right? And you can say, okay, well, start using local IIS web server, and actually give it a path. So on the web tab, use local IIS web server, and that will not use your we call it Avalon, but I guess there's some other name that people use for the local web server. The internal web server to Visual Studio. I should know this, shouldn't I? I'm the Visual Studio guy. But anyway, if you say use local IIS web server, that'll fix it. So go into the properties of the project, web tab, use local IIS web server, and it won't use the Visual Studio there you go, Visual Studio development server. There you go. Okay, cool. Hopefully that helped. And Brian, I guess I'll turn it over to you, man. If you're there.
Fantastic. Wow. There was a ton of tips there. Definitely, I learned something new stuff. Pretty impressive, Zain. Definitely. Before everybody heads up, I just quickly want to go in and just thank, first of all, our sponsors, our primary sponsors, for their support and continued support. We're adding a third primary sponsor to our list here fairly soon, so we're very happy to see the support coming from and going into the community. Just some quickly upcoming events. We have Zain Naboulsi coming on again at 7:30 p.m. Doing a second round of his greatest hits. Also, June is pretty stacked. We got the 2nd of June, so in a couple of days' time, we have Lego Software Engineers, How to Build Reusable Software by Theo Youngerbot. We also have Lohit Nagara doing Open Data for Open Web on the 9th of June. Then we have Angela Dugan with another Visual Studio presentation, Curing Your Testing Blues with Visual Studio 2010 and TFS on the 16th of June. And the postponed Scott Guthrie Unplugged session, session 9, is moved to the 23rd of May. Oh, sorry, of June. That's meant to say June, guys. Not May. That was the original date. So, everybody, thank you very, very much for coming on. If anybody needs to get hold of us, here is the usual details for getting on board and